Hello, you're watching James. My name is James, you're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. Well, welcome to the first episode of Watching James Revisited. This is going to be a series that is just going to come out on occasion, not too often, but just on occasion, and they're going to come out when it's sort of appropriate. This is a sort of look back through my back catalogue of videos, and I'm going to re-release an old video that sort of is relevant to a particular situation. Today, there is an Aliexpress sale starting tomorrow, and I thought what better video to kick this sort of sub-series off than my 3 rules that I utilise to buy automatic watches on Aliexpress. Now, since making this video, I have continued to use these 3 rules when buying automatic watches on AliExpress, and I've found them to be very, very helpful. On occasion, when I have gone off track occasionally, I bought a watch that didn't fit in with these 3 rules that I've made for myself. Well, every time I've kicked myself and I thought, why didn't I follow those 3 rules that I've made? This particular video I made almost a year ago, and it was one of my favourite videos that I've made, and I think it's a really good video. Well, at least in my opinion. And I think it is relevant. It's a great video to watch prior to thinking about buying a watch from AliExpress, and especially with the sale period that's just about to happen tomorrow, I thought absolutely, if you're looking to buy a watch tomorrow on the sale, or even in the near future from AliExpress, check out this video, watch it, think about it, try and apply some of these rules if you think they're relevant to you, and I think it's going to make you end up getting a better watch from AliExpress. So let's jump straight into it. Just remember, because it's one of my slightly older videos, the quality may not be quite as good. My editing skills weren't quite as good back then. My lighting, my audio, all that stuff. But just check out what I'm talking about. Check out my 3 rules that I've come up about buying automatic watches off AliExpress. I really hope that it's enjoyable as well as helpful for you guys. So check out one of my older videos coming right to you right now. Watching James Revisited. 3 rules to buying automatic watches on AliExpress. So what are these rules? Let's jump straight in, shall we? Rule number 1. Number 1 relates to those sub $50 or around $50 range super affordable watches. And that rule is keep it simple. I'm not talking about basic or bad. I'm just talking about keeping the dial simple, keeping the case simple, keeping the band or bracelet simple. And let me flip the camera around now for you. I'm going to show you some of the watches that I'm talking about and what exactly I mean by keeping it simple. So rule number 1, keeping it simple. All of these watches costed at or about 50 Australian dollars. This is a little bit under, this is a little bit over, this is a little bit under, this is about exactly $50. So let me explain to you what happens when you buy a watch that's not simple. This one here comes with a bezel, it's automatic, it has a metal bracelet, it has a see-through case back. It's not what I would call simple. And as a result, you end up with a bezel that is fixed in place. Well, that's not ideal. You end up with a really bad, poor, folded metal bracelet with quite a poor clasp and a really quite a poor movement inside. It's also got an alloy case, so you don't even have the best materials. So you're really spreading that money way too far amongst the watch. You're not going to get a good watch at this price if you were going for such complexity. The BERNY, it's sort of simple. It's a simple looking, obviously a homage looking watch. It has no bezel, that's okay. But they've put a lot of money into this solid stainless steel bracelet. And the bracelet is actually sort of okay, but the problem is the amount of money that they've spent on that bracelet has then taken away from the rest of the watch. And as a result, you again have this alloy case. You got a particularly bad movement inside this one that makes a lot of noise. And even the execution of this stainless steel bracelet is very floppy. Doesn't have the best clasp on it. Too much money spent on the bracelet, not enough left to spend on the watch. Now this one is getting much closer to being what I mean. It has a very simple dial. I think it might also have an alloy case, this one, but this one was fairly cheap, so I'm not too concerned about it. The movement inside this one
isn't too bad. It's not amazing. It does make a bit of a noise, but not anywhere near as much as either of these two. And as I wanted a relatively cheap strap, something which you're realistically going to take off the watch. So I'm really glad that they didn't actually spend a lot of money on this strap, because it's something that I'm going to take off and replace with something that I like a lot better. So what happens when you actually buy a watch for around this $50 that ticks the boxes of keeping it simple and picking the right watch? We end up with my BERNY watch. This is an amazing watch. I absolutely love it. And it's very simple when you look at it. The dial's very simple hands, very simple case construction, the way it looks, nothing too fancy there. The band is surprisingly good on this one, but it's nothing too special, but it is comfortable. As a result, you've ended up with a watch that looks quite good. You've ended up with a solid stainless steel, and we now have a SEAGULL movement in here, which is actually quite good. Yes, it has a see-through caseback. I personally would rather just a solid caseback on these, which might give you a little bit more water resistance, but BERNY has been able to do an amazing watch at a very affordable price. So if you are looking for a watch using rule number 1 of keeping it simple, this is what I'm talking about. Not just BERNY, but watches that look and feel very much like this one.
So now we come to rule number 2. Rule number 2 is manage your expectations. When you're talking about these watches around the $150 range, okay, when you're looking at US dollars, maybe $100 range, you're talking about watches like Pagani Designs. Now, Pagani Designs are well known for being super affordable. You get a lot of great specs for your money, but there are generally a few compromises. So let's flip the camera around now. I'm going to show you the few of the watches that I have on hand that are in this $150 range, and I'm going to talk through with you what I mean by managing your expectations and what that does to achieve a really good watch at this price.
So when I talk about managing your expectations at around this $150 price point, I am talking about watches like these Pagani Design watches. These are really great watches in on themselves. I really enjoy having them, I really enjoy wearing them, but they come with a number of compromises. And I'm going to talk to you more about the compromises rather than the positives about these ones. The compromises for me are always threefold. Firstly, bezel action is always a little bit average. There's a bit of movement, back and forth, up and down. Same on this Pagani. It sounds alright, but there's certainly a bit of movement. Secondly, bracelets and bands, there's generally a bit of a compromise. This one's actually a really good example of that. When you look and feel the bracelet, it's actually quite impressive. It's got a nice, good clasp on it, it's milled, it's solid stainless steel, there's screw links, solid end links. So what am I complaining about? Why am I compromising here? Well, it's when you start comparing this against a watch that's a little bit more expensive, a little bit better. There's a really distinct difference between this price range bracelet and something a little bit more expensive. So you're just managing those expectations. Don't expect it to have a bracelet as good as a luxury watch. I know that's fairly obvious, but still people are going to get this and be a bit disappointed. This one's the same. They've actually made a custom rubber strap for this one. It is homaging the strap that this watch is homaging as well. And again, it's actually okay. It looks quite good. It's quite neat and tidy. It fits in super well into the case. But the problem is the overall construction of it is a little bit average. You'll see it's very thick and stiff in these sections here. The little clasp they use is not really big and long enough. I struggle to get my hand through that. Overall, it's okay, but don't get too overly excited about it being amazing. Managing your expectations. The third issue is the overall finishing. There's a bit of a consistent thread with these sort of watches. It's good, but when you compare it against something a lot more expensive, you're going to end up being disappointed. So don't be disappointed, manage your expectations. How many times can I say that? And when you do manage those expectations of watches in and around this price range, you're going to be getting an amazing watch at an amazing price, and you should love and enjoy it.
And rule number 3. Rule number 3 is buy the brand. What I mean by that is buying a watch brand that is well respected, that has lots of reviews, that has lots of information on the actual store itself in regards to customer reviews, but also lots of people like me, lots of other watch reviewers, lots of other information online talking about a watch brand, so you sort of know what you're going to get and you know you're going to get a certain standard of watch. Before I flip the camera around and talk to you a little bit more about this while showing you a couple of watches, I think this particular rule or this particular price range is the most important out of all of these three rules. Because for me, if I'm spending $300, I'm starting to think, well, I don't need to buy an Aliexpress watch. I can look at more mainstream watches. I can buy Seikos. I can look at the second-hand market or watches that are just like a year old and you get some amazing bargains at that sort of price. You can do things like jumping on a Kickstarter or looking at micro brands. You're starting to get into that sort of range of money. So you really want to think, do you want to buy an Aliexpress watch? Also, I also start to think, well, if I'm going to spend $300, do I just wait a little bit longer, put another $100 or $200 towards another watch, and get something pretty amazing? But this is about rules about Aliexpress, so let's concentrate on that. In regards to Aliexpress and this price point, if you look throughout the websites or throughout the different stores on Aliexpress, you'll see there are lots of watches being sold for this money or even a lot more. And you can really tell if you look really closely at them that they really don't deserve that price range. They look like to be okay watches, the specs are okay, they've got NH35s or Miyotas in them, but when you look closely, when you look at the reviews, when you look at the photos attached to the reviews, you can see what they really are is more that $150 price range watch. Nothing wrong with those watches, but I wouldn't be very impressed if I'm paying $300 or $400 for a watch that really looks and feels like a Pagani Design watch. So let me flip it around now and I'm going to show you a couple of things that I mean by this, by the brand, and explain what that means for you.
So now you're spending a little bit more money, you need to buy the brand. And by that I mean watches like this San Martin and this Cronos. There are other companies on Aliexpress that do great watches as well. These are just the two brands that I've had hands-on experience with, that I've also watched a lot of reviews about and that I can recommend. When you get one of these watches, you can expect a certain level of finishing, a certain sort of bezel action, a certain quality of the bracelet, and you also end up with a certain type of customer assistance or help. This watch here came with a couple of QC issues, nothing too dramatic, but something that just needed to be tweaked and fixed. I got onto Cronos and they resolved that for me very quickly. And I felt very confident even before it arrived that if there was going to be any issues with it, or if this one had arrived with any issues, that I would have the support from the company to have them resolved for me. So I'm buying the brand. I'm buying something that is reliable, something that has a good customer feedback, has good customer service, and something that I know is going to be a little bit better finished, better feeling, better looking than those of the cheaper watches.
So I thought it'd be a great thing to buy a watch that ticked all three boxes of this video. Buy something that was relatively simple, something that I'd managed my expectations of, and I bought the brand. So what I did, looked on Aliexpress like I do fairly regularly anyway. I was looking at San Martin, I was looking at Cronos, I was looking at a couple of other brands, and I found a few watches that certainly I think ticked that box. However, they weren't really watches that really excited me. And I'm spending my own money on these watches. It's great to be able to show watches and do reviews for this channel. However, primarily it's for me to enjoy them, it's for me to wear them day to day. I'm not going to spend $300 or $400 on a watch just for a video. So what I did instead was thought, well, I have actually bought lots of watches off Aliexpress already this year. What do I have in my collection at the moment? Does any of those watches tick all three of those boxes? And as soon as I looked, of course there is. There's pretty much my favorite watch of the year. Well, I'm not sure if it's my favorite watch of the year, but I think it's certainly the best watch for the price that I've purchased this year. And it's this Pagani Design Pilot watch. Yes, okay, it's a Pagani Designs, and not everybody likes this brand. Not everybody thinks, oh my god, that's as good as a San Martin. It's not really. That's not what I'm talking about. What it is, look, it's a simple looking watch. It's got a simple case, there's no bezel, there is no bracelet that is bad, the finishing is pretty good. Number two, when I bought it, I knew it was a Pagani Design.
I previously got excited about some watches from them. When they'd arrived, I'd been a little bit disappointed. Ever since then, I'm always very careful to manage my expectations. So when this one arrived, it was so much better than I expected. It's also from a brand that is well known. Whether you like the brand or not, there is plenty of information online about it. There are lots and lots of reviews on the particular Aliexpress stores, and there are lots of Aliexpress stores selling these watches, and there's a lot of reviewers doing reviews on these watches. So before you buy one of these sort of watches, you can jump online and you can watch a plethora of different reviews about it. So I think even though it is a cheaper watch, it was only about $150, it actually ticks those 3 rules boxes. So that's my video for you, my 3 rules of buying watches on AliExpress. I have deviated from these rules previously, and generally when I do, I end up with a watch that I am disappointed in. So I am certainly going to be trying to always follow these rules that I've set out for myself. I hope that perhaps these rules may help you in the future when you're buying watches from AliExpress. I certainly think when you're looking at these more affordable watches, it's worthwhile putting that extra little bit of effort in to ensuring you're getting the right one, because there's no point wasting money on something that you haven't seen, that when it arrives, it's disappointing for you. So hopefully these rules help a little bit and you end up with some great watches in your collection. I thank you so much for watching. I hope you have fun buying watches on sale on AliExpress through November. I know I'm certainly going to be buying a few, and I hope to see you soon, and I'll be showing you some of those watches that I purchased shortly. Bye.